The smell of a dead animal, a carcass, an animal that's just been killed, is something that you'll never, ever forget. And it's that sticks with you. And it's that gives me the energy to continually try and do my best to put a hold and a stop to what is happening and what is still happening out in South Africa.
Welcome to another episode of Rewilding the World with me, Ben Goldsmith. And I am very excited and a little bit starstruck to be sitting here with one of the greatest batsmen ever to have played cricket for England or anywhere, Kevin Pietersen, who I've known for a very long time and with whom I talk less about cricket nowadays and much more often about conservation, nature, a bit of parenting, and most of all, how we're going to save the African rhino species that remain. Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time.
It's always a pleasure to speak to you. To see you is even better. Let's see what we can get through in the next little while.
I remember the first time you came into my consciousness, I watched you take the field for England in those string of one-day internationals where you made 100 in every single game. And I was lucky enough to meet you a few years after, I think shortly after the Ashes 2005. And we had a lunch together with my brother Zach and a handful of others in Mayfair in London. And you said... So what is it about your obsession with all of this environmental stuff? You know, you said something along those lines to me, and we had the beginnings of quite an interesting conversation then. And I don't know that I would have called it that when your cricketing career came to an end, you'd become one of the most important campaigners for rhino conservation and against the wildlife trade. It's really phenomenal what you're doing. I just want to jump right back to start this conversation. You grew up in Natal, South Africa. Did you grow up in nature? Did you grow up with parents that took you outside? How big a feature were wildlife and nature in your childhood?
We were just asking to do the audio for this podcast, and my immediate test on audio was to say how horrible the weather was and how much I needed to get down south and get to South Africa. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because you ask if outdoors is a way of life and was my way of life. Well, everybody in the Southern Hemisphere lives outside. We have wonderful weather. It's a place where you want to be outside. You don't have winters like this. I mean, it's 10 to 3 now. It's starting to get dark. By 4 o'clock, it's probably going to be dark. You just don't get that in Africa. And so, yes, the life is outdoors. The life is wild. We lived on a green belt, so we were often in the wild, often in the bushes. I'm a very active, very physical kind of guy. This morning I was running around here. I live outside London now, so running around here, exercising. But as a kid, that's exactly what we did. We were outdoors, playing all sorts of sports, exercising, swimming in the pool. I was one of 4 boys in the house, so we were fiercely competitive just within our 4 walls. So to answer your question, absolutely, Ben, it was a very, very wild upbringing. Africa in the 80s was not for the faint-hearted.
And were either of your parents or any of the grown-ups in your life particularly interested in wildlife? I mean, was wildlife and going to the national parks and even just looking for animals in the space around where you grew up, was that part of your childhood as well?
It's part of everybody's childhood in Africa. They say you're not born in Africa, Africa's born in you. I think that is incredibly clear from the way that you are when you go through your early upbringings. And we're just lucky to have so much nature on our doorstep, living in this country and living, if you're in the US or in Europe, I mean, you're going to travel a long way to go and see a lion or a leopard. But when you're in South Africa or when you're in Africa, you've got an hour and a half to travel by plane, if you're not lucky enough to have it within 10 minutes on your doorstep.
Yeah, I grew up on the outskirts of London in Richmond, and I was surrounded by nature, but definitely I grew up with the impression that wildlife is something that happens elsewhere. You know, we had good small wildlife, we had good birds, and I was building little ponds for frogs, and I was out there looking at these kind of things. But the idea of seeing something larger was completely alien. And I developed a bit of an obsession growing up with the idea of bringing some of our own lost species back. Now, there's a letter somewhere in one of my drawers at home where I'd written to the guy who runs Richmond Park, age 10 or 11 or something I was, saying, why couldn't we bring wild boar back to Richmond Park? And he wrote back saying it might be a danger for walkers and horse riders. Well, of course, if you told me back then that such species as the beaver, the wild boar, the European wildcat, the white-tailed eagle, white storks, that these species that were long gone from Britain would be back before my 40th birthday, I wouldn't have believed you. And so we are undergoing something of a rewilding restoration movement. But where you grew up, it's all there and it's everywhere. But some of those species have suffered catastrophic declines. And so during your playing career, you're obviously pretty focused on cricket, and it's pretty relentless, the schedules that modern day professional cricketers have to stick to. Did you have time to get back to nature during that intense period of your professional life? Did you maintain that connection?
Yeah, very good question, Ben. Not as much as I would want to have had. I think when you're South African and you're playing for England, you've got to really, really be careful about what your heritage is, and you've got to act very much so that you're English. So I didn't get back to South Africa as much. Clearly, you never ever lose your heritage. So when you live somewhere for 20 years, that's who you are. You can try and fake it as much as you want. But unfortunately, for 20 years, I was born and brought up in Africa and South Africa, and South Africa is me. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's a fabulous place. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. And when you're playing as busy and the schedule is as relentless as the schedule is, it was really hard to get back. But I had a lot of family still in South Africa, a lot of friends still in South Africa. And on occasions we got back, but I certainly didn't get back as much as I would have loved to have. And I think that that's the reason why I'm making up for it now, because there's a lot of lost time for me and Africa. But I think we've probably made up for it by now, because we're there all the time. We have a couple of homes there now, right in the middle of the wild. And so we spend a heck of a lot of time out in South Africa. I'm bringing my children up in South Africa. My boy, he's 14 now. He's a wonderful photographer. He's incredible in the wild. He is unbelievable at tracking animals. And all he wants to be is a ranger and a photographer out in the wild one day. So we're doing a pretty good job at bringing our children up very, very wild.
And of all the species that you'd hope to see as a visitor to South Africa, the one which is perhaps most imperiled and has suffered the most catastrophic declines really is the rhino. And if I'm right, there are two categories of rhino, the black rhino and the white rhino. And I read somewhere that the white rhino wasn't so called because of any white coloration. It's because it's the wide rhino. Is that right?
Yeah, white. So it's got the wide lip. Yes. It's more of a grazer instead of a browser. So the browser is the black rhino. The black rhino's got a hooked lip, and black rhino goes and browsers, but the grazers are the white rhino. They're grazing on the floor. There's more white rhino than there are black rhino. I mean, it's really sad. We never see black rhino anymore. We're lucky enough to see white rhino still. So we got a house in the middle of the bush. We see more leopard every time we go than we see rhino, which if you contrast that to 10 years ago, I mean, you would see rhino everywhere. But now you definitely hardly ever. We'll go 2 or 3 days without seeing rhino. But we will see leopard, I mean, all day. I mean, I have a leopard sitting at a table next to us for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Rhino, you never see him.
So what was the historic range of each of those, the black and the white rhino? Historically, where we're talking kind of 300, 400, 500 years ago, where would you have found each of those? And how far north and where were they?
What we do know is that there's been a catastrophic drop-off in numbers. We've lost 90% of the rhino population in the last 10 years in southern Africa. And I mean, there's areas where there used to be an abundance of rhino. You just do not see a rhino. We're lucky enough to see rhino where we are occasionally, but you just don't see rhino. I mean, you go to the Kruger when I was a kid, and you come across a rhino sighting, and it's like, okay, yeah, cool. You see them around every corner. You see a leopard and there are just cars everywhere. Like, it is just the thing to see. Like, it is just the most unbelievable sighting. And the strange thing is now, because I'm on radio, so we're private, and we drive on 6,500 hectares, but we're part of the Sabi Sands Nature Reserve, which is an associated private nature reserve alongside the Kruger National Park. There's no fences, so you get corridors and traffic and thoroughfare of all sorts of animals, everything really. And we're on radio. So when I'm driving around, I'm on radio, I'm doing my thing. My little boy's next to me taking photos and directing us and saying, Dad, did you hear that? Let's go there. And to cut a long story short, a rhino sighting is something that people respond to immediately. And even me, I will be listening on the radio and you'll see a guy, they'll say, okay, we've got a leopard sighting here. And it's like, okay, well, where am I? Oh, it's about 20 minutes to drive to go to that leopard sighting. Anyone that comes on with a rhino sighting, where is it? We're going to go and see it, because you don't know when next you're going to see a rhino, and you want to take photos of seeing a rhino. You want to spend time in the presence of these majestic creatures. So that's a short story on how rare it is to see these and how special they are still to see.
But there's no shortage of habitat. I once went to the Kruger and I just could not believe the size of it.
It's massive.
This national park is sort of the size of an average European country. And of course, there's habitat, the private reserves and so on, all the way across to Namibia on the other side of the Cape. So it's not a habitat issue. This is out and out an illegal hunting issue because of demand from certain Asian nations, correct?
Yep, that's exactly what it is. It's a used to be related to medicinal purposes, ancient beliefs around being a cure for cancer, ancient beliefs around being an aphrodisiac. And those mythical beliefs have somewhat, with education and with the access to the internet, being put on hold, whereby now they are purely symbols of wealth. So if you've got rhino horn, if I had a mantelpiece here and I got rhino horn on my mantelpiece and I was able to roll around with rhino horn, like, I'm the dude. I've obviously got big cash and I can play on any stage. And that's the hard thing now is trying to almost squash that. But when there's money involved, there's corruption involved, everybody wants to earn a quick buck, it's hard to do, Ben.
So when we're talking about big cash, I mean, how much does a rhino horn retail for, a normal size rhino horn in China or Vietnam or one of these places? Black
markets between 60 to 80,000 US dollars, more expensive than any other commodity per kg.
And there's no, in scientific terms, there's no basis to the idea that this is a medicinal treatment for anything.
It's just keratin. It's your fingernail. So you do that. You bite your fingernail. That's rhino horn. And I've been on in that many unfortunate situations where you've got the dead animal in front of you. And then I've also been in some pretty cool positions where we go and dart and dehorn rhino, because that's one way that we believe right now is a way to slow down the trafficking of the animal. You put that in your mouth, the shavings of a rhino horn, and it's keratin. It's your fingernail. It is nothing more and nothing less. It is just keratin.
So what does this criminal industry look like? I mean, who is actually out there with a gun, stalking around, shooting these things, presumably at huge personal risk to themselves? And who are they doing it for? And how is that rhino horn finding its way to these markets in Asia? Can you just give me a little bit of an overview of what that looks like?
You've obviously got the top dogs who are in the east. They then filter through into and they have their ways of transporting. So they've obviously got mechanisms to engage people on both ends of the water. And they then have people situated locally as commander-in-chief of the operation. And then you've just got the runners. And the runners are the three guys that go in overnight at night in the cover of darkness. They'll go in at dusk and they'll work till dawn. And they'll go in and they'll go and see what they can get. Now, more often than not, these guys have been informed by people working inside the national parks. 70% of the staff that work in the Kruger National Park are corrupt. These statistics are frightening to see, that you've got people working in an organization where these animals are, and most of them are corrupt. So when you're getting the tip-offs, and you're also getting people that are very, very happy to risk their lives to just pop in and go and see what they can get, I mean, it's a dangerous place. I always take people out. We do it once a year. We take a load of people out into South Africa, and we go and raise money for all my conservation efforts. And during the day, it's amazing. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. I always say to people, would you walk over there? And they'll go, yeah, I'll walk over there. I said, we'll go for a walk. We'll go and do that over there. As soon as the cover of darkness comes on, I said, would you walk over there? The guy's like, absolutely not. There is no ways I would step foot outside of this door, outside of this fence, or outside of this gate. So you can understand the level of desperation for a lot of these people who are engaged in this. I've interviewed many poachers. I've spent a lot of time in the community, And actually, there is a big part of me that feels very, very sorry for the situation that these people are in, because they're desperate people. They've been promised a lot by the government in South Africa, and unfortunately, the government hasn't delivered for these people. They've been promised water, they've been promised roads, they've been promised all sorts of things that in a country like South Africa you would almost expect, and they haven't got them. And so when you've got desperate people who are happy to do desperate things in order to survive, can you really blame them? You sort of can't. So there is a part of me that feels incredibly sorry for these people. But there is a level of greed within that, which all human has, and those are the ones that keep going in.
So what sort of money do you think these guys are being paid by that criminal enterprise, as compared with their ordinary annual income?
Yeah, I think about $1,000 to go in, or $1,000, $2,000 US to go in and go and get what they can get. That's a lot of money in rands. That's a heck of a lot of money.
And do you ever hear about these guys going out there as poachers and getting killed by other wildlife?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, other wildlife takes them out. A lot of times they end up being in a bit of a battle with rangers. So there's loss of life through that. A couple of rangers have been killed as well in a contact. So it's messy business. It really is messy business. We're out there taking photos of these beautiful animals, but actually behind enemy lines, there is a war raging on the illegal wildlife trade. It's really, really sad, but really serious. And
Kevin, you've posted some pretty devastating and pretty emotional things on your social media in the last few years. Some harrowing footage of rhinos that have been shot but not killed. The horns have been removed and it's a bloody mess. Often a baby rhino hanging around the corpse of its mother. And you've posted some really devastating things. You've been in those scenes. How is that? How is that for you? How is it generally to be there in the aftermath of one of these poaching expeditions?
Okay, so the site is one thing, right? People see them and I can post it and you can see it and you can say it's harrowing and you can look at that and go, how dreadful, how awful, but you can scroll to the next picture and there's another, probably a picture of an island that you're looking at, and it's just that immediate sort of like, oh wow, horrendous, horrible, and then you scroll your feed and it can be something else. So that immediate transition from sadness and pain within a couple of swipes of your finger, it's all sorted. And I say that because sight is one thing, but the smell, Ben, is on a different level. And it's a smell that you will never, ever, ever forget. The smell of a dead animal, a carcass, an animal that's just been killed, is something that you'll never, ever forget. And it's that sticks with you. And it's that gives me the energy to continually try and do my best to put a hold and a stop to what is happening and what is still happening out in South Africa.
What do they do with the orphaned young ones? Because the poachers presumably aren't killing the baby ones, and the babies hang around the bodies of their mothers.
Yeah, they go across to a place called Care for Wild. There's a wonderful woman called Petronelle that takes over once the orphaned rhinos are there. And she must have, goodness, she's got tens of she's got a lot. She's got a lot of baby animals. And these are animals that are in distress. These are animals that haven't fed for a few days. These are animals that sometimes get found on the verge of death. And you're right, they try and protect their mums. They try and protect their dads more often than not than the mums. So we've relocated quite a few of these animals. And I've spent quite a lot of time with these animals at Care for Wild. It's the most wonderful organization, and they need so much funding in order to maintain the lifeblood of these animals.
I think the most devastating thing about the whole thing is that these big, gentle giants, they have no natural predators. They should live a natural life and die a natural death, and we are obliterating them as a species. In the pursuit of this pointless product for this greed. And
Yeah,
Kevin, you're devoting your energy to this, with all the determination that you brought out into the cricket fields, and I know the determination of former cricketers. My brother-in-law, Imran Khan, has got a determination the likes of which I've never seen in anyone in my entire life. And I know you bring that same passion, that same energy to your life's work, which is to save this species. Now, how are we going to save Africa's rhinos and build up their numbers back to what they could be, given how much habitat there is, and also how much of an economic benefit they are to African countries? People come from all over the world to see them.
That's the thing as well, right? The economic value to the continent is a big thing. Africa would not be Africa without one of its big five, and the rhino is front and center of that big five. So we've done incredible work. We've slowed down. When I started in this conservation place, 2013, they were having 3 deaths a day. So every 8 hours, an animal was being taken out. We're down to about 1, sometimes less, per day now because of the systems that we've got in place. I mean, we've raised crazy amounts of money, and we've got systems in place there now, which are just wonderful, wonderful systems. So we're able to stop the perpetrators way before they shoot the animal. On occasions, we miss, but there are systems in place now that are doing very, very good jobs. We're dehorning a lot of the animals too, so there's a lot of amazing people that are doing some incredible work. But all these things take time, and they also cost money.
So you mentioned dehorning. I read somewhere that the poachers often kill the rhinos that have been dehorned anyway, maybe to avoid having to track the same animal again, or maybe just out of spite. Is that the case, or does this work as a strategy for deterring poaching?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely is a case, because you don't want to retrack an animal that has no horn. And if a horn is fetching between $60,000 to $80,000 per kg, I mean, the dehorning that we do is up to skin, but it grows back so quick. So they're still killing these animals and taking out whatever they can get, because the more they get, the more money they make. So there is that case, but I mean, we got some really cool bits of technology out there that are doing wonderful things to stop the perpetrators before they get to the animal. And then also, because there's been such a decline in the population, the vast amount of space is actually now right, and there's a central zone called the IPZ where the rhinos are hanging out. And that's the interprotection zone, and so there's a lot of good things that are happening there in terms of security and surveillance. So we're just hoping that this dehorning of the animal is going to play as big a role as it is continuing to play at the moment.
This episode of Rewilding the World is very kindly brought to you by Uni, that's UNI, the world's first nature-friendly line of luxury body care. We've all heard about the harm that sun cream does to coral reefs, but it's not just sun cream and it's not just coral reefs. Well, Uni makes plastic-free, nature-friendly essentials like shampoo, conditioner, hand wash, and even natural deodorant, all full of nourishing ingredients such as seaweed kelp, aloe vera, and olive oil. We've been loving our Uni products, but don't take it from me. Here's my wife, Jemima.
Yes, I really love them. They're such clean and nourishing products. The microalgae body oil is so good and really smells amazing.
You can find Uni products at Space NK or at weareuni.com. What about drone technology? Other fields of conservation have been completely revolutionized by the advancing technology in drones. Is that relevant to you?
Yes, we've had them up. It costs too much money, Ben, when you're trying to put that kind of dynamic into the sky, and it's all got to be privately funded. It costs a lot of money. The Kruger National Park is a government organization, and they don't have the funds to be able to start playing in that space. So it all has to be privately funded. And we've dipped our toe in the water with that, and it's something that you can't continually do. So we fund other surveillance technologies. And we're also just part of a major organization that does pretty cool things to try and make sure we don't lose that species, especially in the southern Kruger, because we've lost them in the north. We don't want to lose them in the south.
And you're very active, particularly in the Kruger. The network to which you refer is Africa-wide. A bunch of NGOs with some international development funding and philanthropic funding acting all over the southern half of Africa to protect this species.
They're amazing people who are all over Africa doing incredible things, Ben. It's not just us. Absolutely, it's not just us. We're a small part of an amazing organization with some incredible people that, I mean, I sit in London now. We on the outskirts have the most beautiful and wonderful life, whereas I know that there's people out there that are just in the bush right now. It's 45 degrees in the Southern Kruger today. I've just seen a report now. And we've got people tracking these animals with these animals. They're on foot and they're there. They're giving their life to protect these animals. So we try our hardest from afar, but the real heroes are the ones that are with those animals now, day in, day and night, trying to make sure that any incursion is looked after and sorted before it becomes a disaster.
Can you tell me what you mean by the term we? What's the name of your organization and who else is it?
Yeah, so we are an organization set up here in the UK called Sarai, Save Our Rhino, Africa and India. We're a social enterprise, and we have some amazing collaborations with some pretty cool brands and some pretty cool people. We have a foundation as well, which is set up in South Africa. So there's many different ways in which we fundraise and many different ways in which we engage corporates to try and do what we do and to maintain the flow of money to keep doing what we have set ourselves out to do. So from that standpoint, we've done nicely. We've done very, very nicely, and we're very respected in the space. And I mean, we've done many a podcast, many a documentary on this. Apart from the smell of the animal, or the dead animal, the animal that's just died, I've interviewed too many mums and children and seen letters that children have written to their mums and dads when they know they're going out and they're going to go and protect these animals, to ever give up on doing my best to save the situation, to help save this situation and to help funding these people. Because for me, it's so important to look after these people that are delivering every single day. When we sit here in beautiful London, yet you've got these people that are dedicating their lives, their hearts and souls to it. So my foundation is the Sarai Foundation, and my social enterprise is called Sarai. I think the interesting thing around Sarai is that we're building a human fence now. What I'm very committed to doing is I get asked that many times, what can we do to help? And previously, I've found it very difficult to tell somebody in London what to do to help and raise awareness, or it's very difficult because it costs a lot of money. It's South Africa. I always say to people, raise awareness and try and go there. Just go and see it, because once you're there, you get that smell, you see the sounds, you hear what you hear. Like that's just you. It just changes your life. But we've started a subscription model where I want as many people as possible to sign up to be a ranger. And with that, it's as little as £1 a month. I mean, 12 quid. I mean, coffees are what, 4, 5, 6 quid in London now. So we're asking people for £1 a month to join our human fence. All the information is on our website, Sarai, on our Sarai website. So for 12 quid a year, you can become a Sarai ranger and feel like you're really part of the process. I mean, you can give more if you want, but we're trying to build that human fence. And with that flow of money, we know that we can continue to doing the right things.
Yeah, it's almost unimaginable, the courage of these rangers across Africa and all over the world. I mean, Global Witness produces a report each year on environmental activists and rangers who get murdered in their line of work. And it's a war. Yep. As you've described it in this conversation as a war, we are fighting a war to defend nature from some pretty powerful financial interests. And the front line is defending rhinos in Africa and India. There's one really good news story that I've seen in the last year, and that is the acquisition by African Parks, Peter Fernhead, of 2,000 or so rhinos from the world's largest rhino farm. And his plan, of course, is to take those rhinos and put them back into the national parks that can accommodate them through Africa. And is not that part of the story quite exciting? They're properly defended national parks, new protected landscapes, having rhinos back for the first time, often in 2 or 3 human generations. What do you reckon?
Ben, it's a great story, but you've got to protect these animals, and protecting these animals comes at a cost, and it's a big, big cost. We've had a load given to us, and I know that a load have been given to other areas. And it comes at great cost when you start talking about anti-poaching units now having to be funded to look after these animals and just to make sure that they stay alive, because John Hume, who sold those animals, I mean, the reason he sold them was costing him too much money to protect, and he's running out of money. So how do you protect all those animals? So yes, African Parks have done an unbelievable thing by acquiring all those animals and now sort of relocating them in a distribution model that they believe it will be successful. But we've just got now a responsibility to keep those animals alive because we know how in demand they are. So the costs, again, there, you're adding 2,000 animals into these wild places, which means that there's another 2,000 animals that have to be dehorned every single year. And that comes at a cost, because you can't dehorn a rhino by just walking up to a rhino and say, hey, buddy, come here. Come, let's cut. That's helicopters, that's vets, that's medicine. I mean, it's a whole operation. We do this a lot, but it's an expensive operation to dehorn just one animal.
So the solution really has got to be to kill the demand for rhino horn, which is kind of what's happened with shark fin and certainly has happened with ivory in China. Big influencers in China have turned against those products in a way that hasn't yet happened with rhino horn.
Yeah.
Are you an optimist? Do you think this market can be killed from the demand side so that this protection that costs so much money and that involves so many people and puts so much at risk isn't so necessary in the future?
Ben, I do see that there's going to be definitely something that works out in a positive fashion in the years to come. And I see that because of what you've just said about shark fin and also what you've said about ivory. With technology, as much as I dislike social media, I think I dislike it more for children and what it's doing to the world and how negative it's making our being. I do see that with technology, people can educate themselves more and you can drive home messaging more. So I'm hoping that through technology, we can make a real big difference. I mean, you just have to have a look at what we've done with one of our partners, one of Sarai's partners, Hublot, the watch brand. And I mean, that's a high ticket item. It's a real high ticket item. Hublot is one of those big luxury brands, those global big luxury brands. When we announced our collaboration, we talk about everything I did in my previous life as a cricketer. I'm not able to target Asia because cricket doesn't really filter into China and Vietnam. Whereas when we announced the partnership, the Sarai-Hublot partnership 4 or 5 years ago, one of the first threads and one of the first people to pick up on the partnership and to sort of go after the partnership was Hublot Vietnam. And for us, that's a major win because it's a market that we're directly able to target with education, where it's somewhere I could never ever get to as a cricketer. I mean, what are they going to, Kevin Pietersen, what's cricket? Cricket's an insect, like we've never heard of it. However, when Hublot goes into a market like that, people go, wow, jeepers, this must be something we must look at. So we've been able to directly target the East through just that one opportunity to partner with such an amazing brand.
Yeah, that I understand that, and that's exactly what happened with ivory and shark fin. Big brands, big influencers turned against the product, and the authorities consequently turned against it, and demand really has crashed. And if you look at the number of elephants in Africa, my understanding is that there is a recovery underway. So that's hugely optimistic. Thank you so much for taking the time, Kevin, to speak to me on the podcast. What you're doing is absolutely inspirational and amazing. Like you, I'm also an optimist. I think we will figure these things out. I think technology makes a huge difference. I think we're undergoing a profound cultural shift in the world in respect of our relationship with nature, and it's down to people like you. So thank you so much.
No, thank you as well, Ben. You are a very, very, very big voice in this space, and you're very active. Thank you.
As a cricket nut all my life, I'll never forget Kevin Pietersen's arrival on the international cricket scene. None of us had ever seen a batsman hit the ball like that, with such power, such aggression, such tenacity. It was really an extraordinary thing. And to see him now apply his energy and his skills to this battle, to save the last of Africa's rhinos, and to bring about a turnaround in their numbers, is really something to see, and I'm so enjoyed having that conversation with him. Please give us a like, share the podcast with like-minded folks, on whatever platform you use, leave us a review. It all makes a big difference. Thank you very much. Next time I'm going to be talking to the remarkable Azam Al-Wash, Iraqi naturalist and hydrologist, who has played a massive role in one of the greatest ecological restoration stories the world has ever seen. The reflooding of the Mesopotamian marshes, the original Garden of Eden, destroyed by Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath Party and all the dams and constructions that were done to deprive the people of the marshes of their water. The dams are down, the water's back. Hear the story with me and Azam.
You already know that this isn't about one species. It's about systems, interdependence, collapse. And yet, wild salmon, one of the clearest indicators we have, are vanishing fast. Their decline signals something deeper, something more dangerous. I'm Jim Murray. I host The Last Salmon. It's not a side story. It's the biodiversity story that everyone like you should be listening to. Season 2's out now.
One of the best ways to support rewilding is to go and visit rewilding projects on the ground. My friends at the European Nature Trust have asked me to tell you about a series of coexistence adventures that they've put together. They're designed to give you the best chance of seeing Europe's most iconic species: bears, wolves, lynx, and so on. All of these are on the rise in Europe because of rewilding projects. These trips are hosted by expert guides and conservationists, and most importantly, the European Nature Trust is giving half of the revenues directly to the foundations working on the ground to restore wildlife. I'd love you to check out these coexistence adventures at the European Nature Trust website.